Hi everyone, Heather here with astrologywithheather.com, and I am back with another special video. And this video is part of my astrology basics series that I am releasing 1 to 2 videos each week over the next couple of months to help you guys understand the most important concepts in astrology. And this is also a free preview video of one of the lectures from my foundational astrology video course that's going to be released on October 29th. And so if you enjoyed this video and you want to go deeper and understand everything you need to know about astrology, you can do that down in the description below. You can find more information detailing everything that's going to be in this course. And so this is a free preview video, like I mentioned before, and this is a video that is, it's a lecture that I wasn't really initially planning on releasing for free to the public because it is such an important lecture in the series. However, it is a really important concept, and it's something that isn't really talked about a lot on YouTube or in free videos and things like that. And even in basic astrology courses, it's either neglected or sort of glanced over or glossed over a lot of the time. And even when it's not, students tend to sort of jump ahead and sort of skip this information because they want to just go to their sun and they want to know what all the different signs mean and you know, learn them independently. And that's completely fine, and I did that at first too. But the concepts that you're going to be learning in this video are fundamental to understanding astrology and are fundamental to understanding the zodiac signs fully and completely, especially when you start to work with more advanced concepts like aspects and aspect patterns and transits and things like that in astrology later on down the line. And so what we're going to be learning here today are the quadruplicities, the triplicities, the dualities in astrology when it comes to the zodiac signs. So these are different categories that each sign is placed in, and understanding these different categories and which ones apply to each sign will help you to have a very easy and very deep understanding of what these signs represent without even going into the individual signs. And so this is a very important concept to understand, and it really is fundamental to understanding astrology as a whole. And so I'm giving this to you guys as a free gift, but you know, if you go through this video and you want to learn more and go deeper and understand everything from the planets, the lunar nodes, eclipses, signs, houses, aspects, house rulerships, angles, transits, and more stuff than even that, and how to put it all together, you can sign up for my foundational astrology video course. There are 3 different course options actually, and you can learn all about that down in the description below. And if you are watching this video prior to the 29th of October when this course is released, there's a coupon code for you down there too to get 20% off the full course. And so without, you know, further explanation, I'm going to dive into this course or this lecture for you guys, and I hope you enjoy it. Thank you so much for watching, and you know, please subscribe to my channel, like this video, and share it if you find that this content has value for you and helps you to understand astrology better. Hi everyone, Heather here, and welcome back to week 2 of your foundational astrology course. And so today we're going to be getting into the zodiac signs, and this is going to really help us to put things together, or to start to put things together in terms of the way astrology really works. Because last week we talked about the planets, right? The 10 planets, including the 2 luminaries, the sun and moon, and what those represent in the birth chart. And they represent a lot of different things, right? And so as I mentioned before, when we were discussing the planets are sort of like the actions that are happening, or the energies that are playing out in your chart. They're like the verbs in the sentence. So these are the actions that are taking place. And then when we get into the energy of the signs, so the planets represent the energy that's being expressed, or you know, the different people in our lives. You know, it's really where things are happening and what's happening. And so the signs are going to give us an idea of how that energy is being expressed. They're sort of like the adjectives. They're describing the actions that are taking place, and they're actions, and sometimes they're nouns. So I guess we could say they're verbs, and sometimes they are nouns, because sometimes they do represent real people. And so looking at the signs, when we're looking at things like the sun or the moon, which represent the mother and the father, or the father and the mother respectively in the birth chart, the signs and the indicators of the signs can give some information. It's not all of the information, but it's some of the information about the energy of, you know, those people in your lives and how it's expressed or perceived by you. So that's really what the signs are all about. It shows you how the energy is being expressed in each house, and how all the planetary energies are being expressed. And so this is a really important piece of the puzzle here, and understanding the planets first gives you a good framework through that understanding for learning about the signs, because the signs all have connections to different planetary energies, and there are certain energies that are enhanced and certain energies that are inhibited by each sign depending on the planet being involved. And so we will start to put this together, and we'll start to get into all of this in this second week lecture. And this is actually going to be broken up into two parts. The first part, which is what we're getting into right now, is where we're going to be talking about the tropical zodiac in general and what it is that we're looking at when we refer to the tropical zodiac. And then we're going to be getting into the qualities of the sign, the duplicity, the triplicity, the quadruplicities. And so these are different ways of organizing the different characteristics of each sign and categorizing the different characteristics of each sign. And the reason I'm leading with this and not just going through and, you know, repeating a bunch of information that you may or may not have heard in other places about each zodiac sign is because you can tell a lot and learn a lot about each zodiac sign just by looking at the sign's qualities without even knowing anything else about the characteristics of the signs. You can get a lot of information about how that energy plays out and how these signs really work in the chart. And the other reason is because these qualities and different characteristics that we're going to be talking about here are very important when you start to learn about the planetary aspects, which we'll be getting into in just a little bit here. So we're going through the signs, the planets, the signs, the houses, and then we'll get into the aspects, but we'll talk a little bit about the aspects next week too. So it's really important to set the stage for understanding the aspects and why certain aspects are more challenging, why certain aspects are more favorable, and how you can work with the challenging aspects, because even those aspects have things in common. And that's what we're going to see here today, is sort of the precursor to that discussion. And so keep these qualities in mind, and we'll emphasize these qualities in the second part of the video too when we discuss each of the 12 zodiac signs. And so let's just kind of get into it here. So I'm going to talk about the tropical zodiac first, and then I'm going to share my screen so you can see the little slideshow that I have set up for you guys. And the PDF file for this week's slides are available in the Google Drive folder, so you can have that to refer back to. I like to give a good amount of information on the slides. I don't like to read off of them or anything like that, but I want you to have the information in a format that's readable, where you can kind of go back and reference it or add notes or whatever it is that you want to do with that, so you don't have to keep watching and rewatching the video. Although I recommend rewatching the video at least once, so you can really, you know, soak it all in and pick up on things that maybe you missed, because there is a lot of information coming in all at once, especially if you're a true beginner and a lot of these concepts are new. And so let's first just have a general discussion about the zodiac. So when we're what I'm teaching right now, and the way that I use astrology, I use the tropical western zodiac. The tropical western zodiac divides the sky up into 12 30-degree segments across the entire, you know, circle of the horizon and all that. So it's 12 30-degree segments that are evenly spaced. And these 30-degree segments, although they are named for the constellations, and there are a bunch of different theories as to why and how the tropical zodiac came about and became a separate entity from the sidereal zodiac, which has to do more with the constellations, but is still not an exact representation of the constellations. And there's no lines in the sky dividing up, this is where this constellation begins and this is where that constellation ends. And so, you know, there's a lot of debate about the different zodiacs and really how and why they came about and how they should be utilized and which zodiac is better and this and that and the other thing. For the purpose of this course, we're using the Tropical Western Zodiac. And the Tropical Zodiac has nothing to do with the constellations. The way that the sky is divided up is based on the solstices and the equinoxes and the trajectory of the sun across the ecliptic throughout the seasons, and that never changes. And it's based more on our perspective here on planet Earth. And in Western, you know, modern astrology especially, that's really what we're focusing on. We're focusing on the way we perceive things. It's more psychologically oriented. It's more oriented toward our perception of events and occurrences and different you know, things that come about in our lives. And so it makes sense that the tropical zodiac would be tied more into Western astrology. And so, so that's what the tropical zodiac is. So it's based off of the points in time that are marked by the solstices and the equinoxes. So the days each year, 2 days each year with the equinoxes where night and day are equal. And the 2 days each year where we have the longest day of the year and the shortest day of the year. So when the sun is at these extreme positions in respect to the earth. And so that's really what we're looking at here. And so it has to do with seasonal markers. It has to do with observable phenomenon that occurs based on that sun's trajectory across the ecliptic here on Earth, on this planet, in nature. And so that is what the tropical zodiac is based off of. The sidereal zodiac is more connected to what's going on out in the heavens. It has more to do with the constellations, but that's not what we're discussing here. So zodiac constellations are different than zodiac signs in sidereal and in tropical astrology. And in tropical Western astrology, the constellations are not something to really pay close attention to. There are people that look at the constellations as well, and I see no issue with that. There are energies with certain stars and star formations and clusters and things like that that can be interpreted in the chart, but that's more advanced and something to worry about maybe way later down the line if that's something that interests you. So for the purpose of this course, we're looking at that tropical Western zodiac and not the constellation. So I just want to clarify that, because especially when people are really new to astrology, it can be a little bit confusing what's happening here with these different zodiacs and different houses and different ways of dividing up the houses, which we'll get into next week. So, all right, that's my little spiel about the zodiac. So I'm going to share my screen here, and I'm going to enlarge in this. So let's put that down there. Okay. So this is, again, what we're going to be going through here. We're going to be going through, or we did just go through, what is the tropical zodiac. So now you have an understanding of what the tropical zodiac is and what we're even referencing here. These 30-degree segments of the sky that are broken up based on the points of the eclipses and the equinoxes. And then we're going to get into the different ways of dividing up the charts. We're going to talk about the dualities first. I have these flipped, and then the triplicities, and then the quadruplicities, and what those indicate in terms of the way that they manifest through the 12 zodiac signs. There we go. Okay, so first we have the dualities. And so all 12 signs are broken up into either masculine signs or feminine signs. The masculine signs are all of the fire and air signs, which we'll get into in just a second. So just know that the masculine signs also contain certain elements. So all masculine signs are fire signs or air signs. They represent energy that is active, willful, outer directed, and has to do with physical strength and physical manifestation, or projecting your energy outwardly through intellectual means or communication. And so it's more of a projected energy where you're putting something out there and something active is happening. The feminine signs are all of the earth and the water signs, and these signs are more receptive and yielding, and they're self-contained, they're more subjective, and they have to do more with inner strength and your subjective experience, as opposed to putting things out there. And they are more like vessels or containers. They're signs where they have to do with you expressing the energy in a way where it's less expressive and more receptive. So it's kind of like you taking things in through the lens of these signs. So the masculine signs are going to be Aries, Gemini, Leo, Libra, Sagittarius, Aquarius, right? So those are going to be the masculine signs. The feminine signs are going to be Taurus, Cancer, Virgo, Scorpio, Capricorn, and Pisces. And these things will make a little bit more sense as we go through and talk about this more in depth as we move through this lecture. So then we have the quadruplicities, which are the elements. I don't know why I did these backwards like this. Okay, so I guess that's what we're doing here. So I put the slides in a different order than I thought. The quadruplicities are the elements. So we have fire, air, earth, and water. And so the fire signs are the more masculine signs, right? So we have fire and air as being masculine signs. They represent action, willpower, usually some sort of physical movement or momentum, passion, expression, especially expression in a very physical way. They're enthusiastic and energized. They deal with energy, volition, movement in a physical way. And so these signs are going to be Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. And when you're looking at fire signs, so each element will work very much in harmony with the other signs in that same element. They work in a very harmonious way. They have a lot in common, and they tend to play off of each other in a way that's very nice and that flows really easily. And so that's something to keep in mind as we go through the quadruplicities, which are the elements. The other masculine element is air. And so air signs are, again, very expressive, but they're expressive in terms of intellectual expression, expressing ideas, thinking, right, and communicating the things that you're thinking, really putting things together in ways that are actionable when it comes to, again, verbal expression or the sharing of ideas or connecting with other people, you know, through language or even in a very real physical sense. And so this is more about the expression of energy in an intellectual way, the expression of energy on the mental plane. And so that's what the air signs have in common. And again, the air signs will work really well with each other in terms of the different energies. And so the air signs are Gemini, Libra, and we also have Aquarius as the third air sign. The earth signs are feminine signs. So this is the first of the two feminine categories. And so the earth signs are, they do deal with the material realm, but in a way that's more receptive. They're very grounded, very practical. It's more about the sensory experience and what's going on in the physical reality and taking that in, as opposed to doing things and exercising your will in order to change things or create things in the physical reality. It's about taking what's already there, looking at how it's interrelated or how things interact, and utilizing that information or that experience, right? Taking it in, that sensory experience. It's taking what's already there and then creating from that, right? Building from that. And so a lot of the earth energy is about analyzing what's happening in the physical and in, you know, the material realm, and doing really practical things with what's already there, as opposed to fire, which is very physical as well, but it's like an action-oriented energy where it's a creative energy, where it can express on its own and create something new. The earth signs are a little bit different. So it's very grounded, practical, dealing with the material and the sensory experience. It's not as mental. Virgo's a little bit of a of a different story, which we'll get into when we get into the mutable energy. But for the most part, it's more material and more sensory. And so the earth signs are going to be Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn. Water, so is the other feminine quality or quadruplicity, the other feminine element. And so water everyone, I'm sure, or most of you should be familiar with the idea that the energy of water is much more receptive and flowy and malleable, and it's associated with the emotional realms, the intuitive realms, creativity, nurturing. It's that really replenishing energy that supports all life on this planet, and so it's a supportive energy, you know, for the most part. And so the water signs are that receptive feminine energy, but it's receptive in a way that's like it receives emotion. It receives feedback from the environment through emotion and through intuition. They're more supportive and nurturing, and they're like containers to help some of the other elements and other signs sort of grow from that energy, right? And so it's deep creativity, it's emotional and intuitive. And so, as I mentioned before, and so the water signs are Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. And so the elements are associated with the trine aspect, which we'll get into a little bit more later on down the line. But like I mentioned before, planets in the same element, or these elements in general, signs associated with each of these elements tend to work really well together. And so that's an important concept to remember. And then we have the quadruplicities, or the triplicities, which are the qualities. And so we have cardinal, fixed, and mutable. And so these are divided up into 3 different categories. There will be 4 signs in each category, and they're all associated with different time frames within the seasons. So different points in each season, so each of the 4 seasons. And that's important to make note of, because it kind of helps to deliver a better understanding of what's going on with each of these signs. And we will get into that in each sign specifically, and how that relates to the season and the changing of the seasons throughout the solar year. And so the cardinal signs have to do with springtime and initiation, not always springtime, right? But the beginning of a season. So the cardinal signs are the beginning of each season. So it has to do with beginnings. It has to do with taking action, starting something new. They're outgoing, enterprising. You know, there is an energy there of trying new things, of forward momentum. A lot of times they need excitement and newness, although Cancer is a receptive cardinal sign. So we'll get into how these go together. This is where you start to see the interaction between these qualities when we get into each sign, because they'll have qualities of being a cardinal sign, but they'll also have qualities of their element and their polarity. So you have to take in consideration all of these different parts of the sign here. And so cardinal signs deal with and are attracted to crisis. They tend to develop fear-based avoidance reactions in response to becoming overwhelmed by crisis. And this avoidance reaction is most common in Cancer and Libra. When we're talking about the cardinal signs, Capricorn and Aries tend to do better with facing crisis head on. Aries will be more likely to just jump in and do something, maybe to their own detriment if it's kind of an impulsive reaction, which it can be. And Capricorn tends to deal with crisis in the best possible way. They have a structure around it. They work hard to deal with what needs to be dealt with. They're very responsible and down to earth about it. But in general, you know, these signs, and I'm mentioning that the difficult aspects of these signs because these aspects, so signs that are in the same triplicity, that have the same quality, they tend to have difficulty playing nicely with one another. They do have things in common. And the thing that they have in common is this energy of initiation, this energy of newness. But they also pose some challenges with one another because they have a lot of things that are not in common as well. And so the cardinal signs deal with crisis. They deal with this energy of having to start something new. And, you know, some signs deal with it better than others, depending on the other attributes of the sign. And so cardinal signs also, if you're talking about medical astrology, which is something that I study and that I incorporate because I do feel like it helps to give a more broad understanding of each of these concepts. The cardinal signs deal with the adrenals. And so crisis, right? They deal with the adrenals, they deal with the sympathetic nervous system, they deal with, you know, this energy of adrenaline and being amped up and being ready to do something. And so they all carry this energy in a little bit of a different way, which we'll get into. And so the cardinal signs include Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, like I mentioned before. Then we come into the fixed signs. The fixed signs are the mid-season signs. So these are the signs where the season has begun. We're in the middle of that season, and the weather patterns and the way things are kind of going on a physical level in terms of our environment, it's pretty stable during that time. We're not in any form of transition. We're not beginning or ending the season. We're just kind of in it. And so these fixed signs tend to hold on to the way things are. They like it when things are moving along really smoothly, where there's not a lot of change, there's not a lot of transition. They can be very resistant to change, and each of these fixed signs is resistant to change in a different way. You always, of course, have to consider the other aspects of the sign that we just talked about. But in general, there is a part of this sign that's going to be resistant to change, and they tend to hold on to things. They want to continue to perfect what already is and to work with that energy, as opposed to beginning something brand new or letting things go. So they tend to hold on to things. They tend to hold on to ideas, experiences, emotions, attachments, relationships, and in the body, toxins. And so, the fixed signs represent an energy that's prone to toxic buildup on an energetic, emotional, physical level. So they're prone to, they're more prone to, and this is not everyone who has a fixed sign is prone to these things, by the way, nor is this everyone who's dealing with a cardinal sign. I don't want people going out and diagnosing other people with things based on this. There has to be specific configurations going on involving these signs. But in general, it's a general significator in medical astrology for, issues involving elimination, where you're holding on to things in the body. So, if you think about the different organs that have to do with detoxification and elimination, like the liver, the colon, sometimes the stomach, the kidneys, the skin even sometimes, right? And the lymphatic system, which that more has to do with the mutable signs, which we'll get into in just a second. But, there is this element of toxicity that's associated with fixed signs when they're out of balance and they're not operating appropriately, when they're holding on to too much instead of moving forward. And so the fixed signs include Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. And so those are the 4 fixed signs. And, you can see that they all are from different elements. And so that's where the difficulty comes into play. Oops. And then finally, we have the triplicities. And so finally, we have the mutable signs, which are the end of the triplicities. So we have the mutable signs, which are the end of season time frames in each of the 4 seasons. They represent a period of transition where things become more malleable, where they have to become more flexible as we move from one season to the next. And so it marks these transition points. They're the most flexible of the signs. They're constantly making adjustments, and they have an easier time letting go of things than the other 2 signs. The cardinals, as you recall, are associated with beginnings. The fixed signs are associated with this energy of stability and wanting to keep things going along a stable trajectory. And the mutable signs are the ending of the season. So they're better with endings than the other signs. They're better with change. They're better with transition. And they almost need that. They need to be able to transition and to change and to adapt and move with the energy as it comes about. And so they need that flexibility. If they don't have that flexibility, it can cause issues. So they deal with movement and adaptability. They must take care not to become too rigid due to fear and trust issues on a mental sort of psychological level. But they do better with less constraint because there is a need to make adjustments and to move and adapt in the way that, you know, mutable signs see fit. And the mutables are prone to developing lymphatic and respiratory issues due to repression and fear. And so you think about the lymphatic system, it's like these fluids in the body that are constantly moving from place to place. They need to be able to flow through the body in order to prevent illness and stagnant energy, and to, you know, continue that detoxification process that's associated with some of those fixed sign energies as well. And then you think about the respiratory system. The breath is constantly coming in and going out, coming in and going out, and we're constantly adjusting our breathing patterns based on the level of physical exertion all throughout the day, or based on our stress and anxiety levels, or whatever it is that we're doing. If we're speaking, we're breathing differently than if we're not speaking. So that's another area of the body where we're constantly changing and adapting and making adjustments all throughout the day. And so it makes sense that the mutables would be associated with, you know, the respiratory system. And so, you know, on a psychological level, these energies can become blocked due to repression and fear, or due to being subject to some sort of constraint, because the mutable signs need to be mutable. I mean, that's why they're called the mutable signs. And so the mutable signs include Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces. And we talked a little bit about the general considerations. And as I mentioned before, there are difficulties in utilizing the energies of each of these qualities. So like mutable, cardinal, or fixed. There can be conflict between the different signs that contain these different qualities, just because their elements are all different. So each of these little categories contains one of the four elements, or each of the four elements. And so the elements really flow in harmony with one another. If you don't have that contact between the elements, it can make things a little bit difficult. And then, so we'll get into that. So this is associated with the square aspect. So it shows the challenges associated with each sign when we're really looking at the different qualities. So there is a focus on the challenges that these signs must overcome or face based on these different qualities. All right, and then getting into the 12 zodiac signs as a precursor to the second part of this video. As I mentioned before, each sign's combination of duality, element, quality, and ruling planet too, because that does give a lot of character to each of the signs. It tells a lot about how the sign operates. If you just know these things about the signs and you really understand the elements and the duality and the quality and what the ruling planet represents, you will know that sign without even memorizing what that sign is doing. And so it can really help you to understand that sign much better when you have that full picture. The signs are the how in terms of the way in which each planetary energy is expressed. And each sign corrects for the imbalances of the previous sign to a certain extent, and keeps the good stuff usually too. So we'll talk about that as we move through the signs in succession. And the signs progress from being very self-focused at the beginning of Aries, which is cardinal fire. So it's the very beginning of the zodiac. It's all about action and initiation and starting something new, all the way through to Pisces, which is way more malleable and adaptable and interconnected and watery and mutable and, you know, transcendent. So they go from being very focused on the self and very self-centered, through to being more interpersonal and about connections with others, to being more transpersonal and about connections with groups of people, and then transcendent, right? Which is beyond human interaction and connection. It's connection between all things. And so that's an important consideration to make too. So hopefully you found this information helpful in your understanding of the signs, and I will see you back here for part 2. If you want to just jump right in and get into that, we can totally do that. And if not, take a little break, take a little breather, contemplate, you know, what I just mentioned to you, take some notes, whatever it is that you need to do, because really understanding and grasping these concepts is going to provide a really good framework for understanding the signs, and will really help you when we get into the more advanced portions of this series. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you back here in just a little bit.